Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the very thing protecting your family's future, the gold in your safe, the coins in your pocket, is now a felony to possess. Imagine being given 30 days to hand over your life savings to a private banking cartel, or face 10 years in a federal prison. This isn't a dystopian fiction. This happened in the United States of America. On April 5, 1933, with a single stroke of a pen, President Franklin D. Roosevelt executed the greatest legal heist in human history. They called it a national emergency, but the men in the shadows called it the Great Revaluation. This is the story of how the American people were stripped of their wealth to fund a new era of debt, and the secret vaults that still hide the truth of where that gold went. Welcome to History's Echo. We don't just tell stories. We follow the money, the power, and the classified blueprints that shaped our modern world. From the secret boardrooms of Wall Street to the high-tech vaults of Fort Knox, we bring you the history they didn't want you to audit. If you're ready to see the world for what it really is, hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into the shadows. The year 1933 was a time of absolute desperation in the United States. The Great Depression had the nation in a chokehold. The air was thick with the dust of the Great Plains and the despair of millions standing in bread lines. Banks were collapsing by the hundreds, and the American people had lost faith in the paper dollar. They began to do what humans have done for 5,000 years in times of crisis. They hoarded gold. Gold was the ultimate insurance policy. It was the only thing the government couldn't print, and the only thing the banks couldn't erase. But for the architects of the new financial system, this private hoard of gold was a problem. It was a barrier to the total control they required. In the shadows of the Federal Reserve, a plan was being drafted. The elite knew that as long as the dollar was tied to gold, they couldn't inflate the currency to fund the massive government spending they had planned. They needed to decouple the dollar from reality. But first, they had to take the reality away from the people. On April 5, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. It was a shockwave that decimated the concept of private property in America. The order required all persons to deliver, on or before May 1, 1933, all gold coins, gold bullions, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank. The penalty for non-compliance was terrifying, a fine of up to $10,000, equivalent to nearly $250,000 today, or 10 years in prison, or both. Think about the psychological impact of that moment. Farmers, shopkeepers, and war veterans who had spent their lives saving gold to protect their children were suddenly branded as criminals. The propaganda machine went into high gear. The government told the public that hoarding gold was unpatriotic and that the hoarders were the reason the economy was failing. It was a classic case of gaslighting an entire nation. People lined up at banks, not to withdraw money, but to hand over their gold in exchange for paper certificates. They were paid $20.67 per ounce. They were told it was a fair trade. But the business of the government is rarely about fairness. Just months after the gold was safely tucked away in the vaults of the Federal Reserve, the government passed the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. In an instant, they raised the price of gold from $20 to $35 an ounce. This was a calculated financial hit. By devaluing the dollar against the gold they had just confiscated, the government effectively wiped out 40% of the people's wealth, while overnight increasing the value of the gold in their own vaults. It was a windfall of billions of dollars, used to fund the New Deal and the expansion of the federal government. But where did all that gold go? This is where the mystery turns into a high-tech architectural enigma. To house this massive stolen treasure, the government built the United States Bullion Depository at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Completed in 1936, it was and remains the most secure facility ever constructed by man. Built with 16,000 cubic feet of granite and 4,000 tons of structural steel, it was designed to be a fortress of technology. The vault door itself weighs 20 tons and is made of drill and torch resistant material. No single person knows the entire combination to the vault. Instead, members of the staff must each dial separate combinations known only to them. But here is the chilling mystery that keeps economists and conspiracy theorists awake at night. Fort Knox has not been fully audited since the 1950s. For over 70 years, The American public has been told that over 147 million ounces of gold sit behind those granite walls. But many insiders, including former high-ranking officials, have whispered that the gold is gone. They claim it was secretly leased out to private banks to manipulate the global gold price, or that it was moved to satisfy secret debts to foreign powers. When politicians like Ron Paul have demanded a full, independent audit of the gold, they have been met with a wall of bureaucratic silence and national security excuses. The technology used to protect Fort Knox today is far beyond just thick walls. It is surrounded by a maze of electric fences, landmines, and satellite surveillance. The nearby army post at Fort Knox houses over 30,000 soldiers and a fleet of Apache attack helicopters. Why such extreme security for a pile of metal if the world has moved on to digital currency? The answer is that gold remains the only true hard asset. Even in the age of Bitcoin and high-frequency trading, every central bank in the world knows that when the system of debt eventually collapses, the nation that holds the gold holds the power. The confiscation of 1933 wasn't just about money. It was a technological shift in the nature of human freedom. Before 1933, you could hold your wealth in your hand. After 1933, your wealth became a ledger entry in a bank's computer, a digital promise that can be erased with a single keystroke. The government proved that they could rewrite the rules of ownership in a single day. They replaced a gold-backed reality with a debt-backed illusion. As we look at the modern economy, with soaring inflation, trillion-dollar deficits, and the rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, the echoes of 1933 are louder than ever. We are entering a phase where the government is once again looking for ways to track and control every cent you own. The Executive Order 61802 was the blueprint. It taught the elite that if they can control the asset, they can control the citizen. Today, the mystery of the gold persists. Is it still there? Or is Fort Knox the world's most expensive empty box? The paper trail is a labyrinth of classified memos and secret gold swaps. What we do know is that the trust between the people and the state was permanently broken on that day in 1933. The heist was legal, but the consequences were global. We are living in the aftermath of 1933, in a world built on the silver-tongued promises of bankers who took the gold and left us with the debt. The vaults of Fort Knox stand as a silent monument to a stolen future, a reminder that in the game of high-stakes history, the house always wins, unless you know how they're playing the game. The transition from the gold standard to the fiat system allowed for the most massive expansion of the military-industrial complex in history. Without the shackles of gold, the US was able to fund the Cold War, the space race, and countless secret technological projects. But the price was the permanent destruction of the dollar's value. If you had $20 in gold in 1933, it would be worth over $2,000 today. But that same $20 paper bill from 1933, it's barely worth enough to buy a sandwich. The heist is still happening every single day through the invisible tax of inflation. And it all started with a pen, a president, and the secret greed of the Federal Reserve. The gold of 1933 didn't just vanish. It built the foundations of a world we are only now beginning to understand. But as the debt-based system nears its breaking point, the question remains. When the next national emergency strikes, what will they come for next? Your property, your digital assets, or your very autonomy? History isn't just a record of the past, it's a warning of the future. This is history's echo. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and uncover the truths they hide in plain sight, subscribe and join our community. Turn on notifications so you never miss a revelation. Tell us in the comments, do you believe the gold is still in Fort Knox? Or has the heist finally reached its conclusion? We'll see you in the next shadow.